Are Chinese communist spies infiltrating American college campuses? Because everywhere I look, I see party culture. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Matt Ganezda, filling in today for Chris Chappell, who didn't want to cover this topic because anyone who does is probably a racist. There are a lot of Chinese international students in the United States, like about 300,000 a year. For more than a decade, China has been the #1 country sending students to the US. And at the risk of sounding racist, most of these students are Chinese. That's right. And that means a lot of them, for the first time, are able to leave an oppressive authoritarian country and experience true freedom. The freedom to study what you want, play how you want, and say what you want, even if it's politically unpopular. Even if it's this. But freedom makes the CCP angry. Yes, this is his angry face. And so the CCP tries to do what it does best: control everything, including Chinese students studying overseas. One way is getting Chinese students to spy on behalf of the CCP. Take, for example, in 2023, a Chinese engineer who studied at the Illinois Institute of Technology. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison for spying. Also in 2023, 5 Chinese nationals who were students at the University of Michigan were charged with espionage after being discovered on a military base late at night with cameras. With hundreds of thousands of Chinese nationals studying in the United States, it's inevitable that at least a few of them will be willing to spy for China, especially if they're coerced. But don't worry, Republican West Virginia Congressman Riley Moore says he's come up with a solution to this problem. Just ban all Chinese nationals from studying in the United States. Moore has introduced legislation in the House called the Stop CCP VISAs Act. This would be China if U.S. officials put as much effort into countering the CCP as they do coming up with acronyms. In a statement, Congressman Moore wrote, "Every year we allow nearly 300,000 Chinese nationals to come to the U.S. on student visas. We've literally invited the CCP to spy on our military, steal our intellectual property, and threaten national security. This cannot continue." 5 other Republican House lawmakers have co-sponsored the Stop CCP VISAs Act, and Republican Florida Senator Ashley Moody is expected to introduce companion legislation in the Senate. Meanwhile, as this legislation is making headlines, the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party also sent a letter to 6 major American universities, requesting a large amount of detailed information on Chinese students. What kind of information? Things like a list of all universities that Chinese national students previously attended, the sources of tuition funding for these students, and the type of research being conducted by the students. Basically the ASL of their potential CCP ties. And if you understood that ASL reference, it's time to schedule your first prostate exam. The letter also claims that Beijing is embedding researchers into top American universities to gain access to sensitive research and data, particularly relating to technology, which, okay, that part is true in a lot of cases. So why are American universities even allowing this? Because money. They see red, then they see green. Congressman John Molinar, who chairs the House Select Committee on the CCP, wrote that the significant tuition revenue generated by international students, many of whom pay full tuition, has caused elite universities to become financially dependent on foreign enrollment, particularly from China. Something about cash really blinds people and shuts them up and deafens them. Are those in his ears? Nah, I'd do the same thing for $500. But is banning all international students from mainland China really the answer? Naturally, a lot of people are unhappy with the Stop CCP VISAs Act and all the talk surrounding it. In the wake of this, the Chinese government is calling for protections for its nationals who are attending university in the US, because the CCP is normally so concerned with protecting China's people. A Chinese embassy spokesperson said the US has long suppressed and persecuted Chinese students in the US who have legal and valid documents and visas, and that China firmly opposes such practices. China opposes suppression and persecution? Quick, someone let the Uyghurs know. I'm sure they'll be relieved. So would this Stop CCP VISAs Act be like the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882? That law prohibited the immigration of all Chinese laborers for a decade after the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad. One anonymous Chinese student of a DC area university said, "I think it's just blatant racism and xenophobia. We are not spies, we are students who want to get a better education." But most Americans aren't looking for a return of the Chinese Exclusion Act. I mean, needlessly oppressing Chinese people? That's not who we are as Americans. That's who the CCP is. The thing is, the US has some of the best universities in the world, and most Chinese nationals studying here are just people trying to get a good education and improve their future. Some are even just trying to escape CCP censorship. The real villain here is not 300,000 Chinese students. It's the CCP. This is the key point that seems to get lost amidst the screaming about spies and the yelling about xenophobia. Even when Chinese international students do spy on the US, they're often forced to do so. Senate Intelligence Committee Vice Chairman Mark Warner said that in some cases, the Chinese spy services are literally threatening Chinese families. If your son or daughter does not come back with intellectual property, you, the family, will be put in jeopardy. So at least one good thing to come out of the introduction of the Stop CCP Visas Act is that it's shedding some light on how much influence the CCP has on American campuses. And it's not just the students. The CCP can influence the universities directly. A new report produced by the Americans for Public Trust found that over $60 billion in foreign gifts and contracts has been funneled into American universities for decades, much of it from China. Just last year, China and Qatar together gifted or contracted over $500 million, which I'm sure had no influence whatsoever on campus politics. They're just doing it because they believe in education, except for certain topics. There's also the so-called sister relationships between US and Chinese universities. A lot of US universities even retain ties to Chinese universities that support the country's military buildup. These relationships are legal and often touted by US colleges as an academic strength, despite being criminally stupid. Yet this is just part of the CCP's broader strategy to gain access to critical research, tech, and information that can help the CCP modernize its military and control the Chinese people. So the problem here is not individual Chinese students, at least not all 300,000 of them. The problem is the CCP. It's the way the CCP pressures its citizens overseas and pays off American universities to look the other way. So to tackle this issue, it's going to take a much more nuanced approach than a law that stops all Chinese foreign exchange students. We're going to have to put some serious effort into it, at least as much as American politicians spend coming up with acronyms. And now I want to talk about Operation Honeypot. We're now in Phase 3. In Phase 1, we asked you to leave comments under every video with the honeypot emoji. Keep that up. In Phase 2, we asked you to click on China Uncensored episodes whenever YouTube recommends them and watch them through to the end. This has helped a lot. Now, in Phase 3, we have something new, because a lot of you are telling us that YouTube is still not notifying you when we publish new episodes. So here's how you can fight that. Sign up for our free weekly newsletter. Every Friday, we'll send you an email with links to all the episodes we publish that week, including the ones YouTube doesn't want you to see. Plus, there'll be some surprise bonus content that Shelley adds in. The only way to get that is to subscribe to our free China Uncensored newsletter. The link is below. Once again, I'm Matt Gnezda. See you next time, is what Chris Chappell would say, because he'll be back tomorrow.